Being emotionally available is killing your sex life. I know that sounds backwards. You've been told to be vulnerable, to communicate, to be in touch with your emotions. But your partner is less attracted to you. The passion is fading, and you're having way less sex. The problem isn't that you're emotionally available, it's that you're missing one key ingredient. And I'm going to show you exactly what that is. Many men can attract women and start relationships successfully. The connection feels strong at first and love flows naturally. But then a pattern emerges. Attraction fades, intimacy dies out, and passion disappears. This happened in virtually every relationship I'd been in. I'd enter excited and hopeful and leave when things inevitably went stale. Here's the paradox. These men are emotionally available. They do the hard work to communicate, to be present, to improve themselves. And yet, as the honeymoon fades, desire feels thinner, sex becomes rarer, and she becomes less engaged. And despite feeling confident everywhere else in life, they feel oddly unsure of themselves. I live this exact pattern, entering into relationships only to watch them deteriorate. More nagging, less sex, growing resentment, and an eventual breakup. But now I'm engaged, and our intimacy, our sex life, and connection only get better every day. The difference is that I learned the missing ingredient. So stick around because I'm going to share why emotional openness isn't enough to create attraction, what the missing ingredient is, and how you can bring it into your relationship today. You've been told to be vulnerable, to prioritize her emotions, be agreeable, don't rock the boat. A lot of us were raised by mothers who taught us not to be like the emotionally disconnected men who came before. And at some level, this is sound advice. But when the pendulum swings too far the other way, men become overly soft, overly agreeable, and overshare everything. The core problem is that you can be emotionally available and still lose your center when emotions run high. And that is exactly when your stability matters the most. Let me show you what I mean. I was raised by my mother. I learned to be nice and agreeable. I always felt safer and more loved when I had my mother's approval. And fast forward into my adult relationships, I had emotional intelligence, but I didn't know how to stay anchored when emotions came up. If my partner's emotions surfaced, it could completely rock my world. And here's the thing. A woman can feel when a man is off his center. Her nervous system detects it as a threat. When that happened, I'd get defensive. I'd use words to explain myself, and I'd become overly analytical. I'd rationalize my way out of conflict because I could feel her pulling away. I just wanted the conflict to stop and to feel connected to her again. Here's what's happening at the biological level. Research in attachment theory and neuroscience shows that our nervous systems are constantly scanning our environments for safety or threat. It's a process called neuroception. And when you collapse emotionally during conflict, your partner's nervous system detects this as a threat signal. Her brain literally interprets your dysregulation as this person cannot protect me. It's not a conscious thing that's happening. It's happening in the primitive parts of her brain that evolved to keep her safe. There's a critical distinction between emotional availability and emotional leadership. You need emotional availability as your baseline. But if you can't stay anchored and grounded while experiencing emotions, either hers or yours, you will lose trust, respect, connection, intimacy, and great sex. This is important, so I'll say it again. Emotional availability without emotional leadership will always lead to disconnection. So how does attraction fade even when you're doing everything right? In the honeymoon phase, dopamine and oxytocin do the heavy lifting. You have lots of sex, beautiful connection, and everything feels amazing. But once that phase ends and the relationship normalizes, as it always does, the bigger patterns start to get exposed. I had always assumed that this was a chemistry problem, that I had just picked the wrong person. Because I thought being nice, agreeable, and serving her needs automatically would create great sex. I told myself that I was doing everything I could to lead, so it wasn't my fault. I put her needs above my own, sacrificed my own to keep the peace. What was her problem? I'd tell myself. But the thing is, nobody had taught me about polarity. You can think about polarity like magnets. And when you have the opposite poles, the North Pole and the South Pole, they attract powerfully. And the stronger the charge on each side, the stronger the pull between them. But watch what happens when I try to push two of the same poles together. They repel. No matter how hard I try to force them together, they keep pushing away from each other. It's the same energy, the same charge, so there's no attraction. This is exactly what happens in relationships. There's a masculine pole and a feminine pole. And whether it's intentional or not, one person will naturally move toward the masculine and one will naturally move towards the feminine. In heterosexual relationships, typically, the man feels most at home in his masculine, and the woman would feel most at home in her feminine. And just like these magnets, the more distinct and defined each pole is, the stronger the attraction will be between you in your relationship. Masculine polarity looks like being grounded and anchored, having clear direction and vision, providing emotional containment, not suppression, being honest about needs and desires, and staying steady during conflict. Feminine polarity looks like being flowing and expressive, connected to emotions, being responsive and receptive, trusting and surrendering, and intuitive and feeling based. One important exception is that if a woman has been around men that she hasn't felt safe with, she will default to her masculine to protect herself. And when this happens, men will often veer more towards the feminine pole just to balance things out. And when men become overly feminized in relationships, it looks like this: tracking her moods and being overly sensitive to her emotional state. He starts over-explaining himself when he senses she's upset. He stops voicing his needs because he doesn't want to rock the boat. And he starts over-attending to her needs, hoping she'll magically figure his out. And here's what's really going on beneath all of this. Psychologist Dr. Robert Glover, who's done extensive research on this pattern, calls these covert contracts. Essentially, they're unconscious agreements where you believe, if I'm nice enough, agreeable enough, and meet all of her needs, she'll want me sexually and meet mine in return. The problem is that she never agreed to this contract. You made it up. And when it doesn't work out, you feel resentful, and she feels confused about why you're suddenly angry when she thought everything was fine. This was me. I was a classic nice guy and still recovering. I can tell you that from personal experience, this always led to frustration and resentment and never getting my needs met. I'd hold grudges internally and while still trying to meet her needs, but I rarely voiced my own, which led to growing resentment on my end that inevitably poisoned the relationship. When all your decisions are about not upsetting your partner, you're setting yourself up for failure. I grew up around men who joked about happy wife, happy life. And obviously, you want your wife to be happy. But that saying sets up so many men for failure. Because when you design your life around simply pleasing your woman, you get the reverse outcome. She trusts you less, respects you less. You have less sex, less intimacy, and less connection. Essentially, you lose everything you were trying to create in the first place. So this begs the question, what actually creates safety and desire? Men often assume that leadership means being dominating or controlling. Those of us who grew up with a strong mothering presence heard that we should avoid being dominant and violent. And in the absence of a strong, grounded, directed masculine presence, a healthy, rooted masculine example, we end up softening our masculine edge. But that masculine edge is where she feels attracted. It's where trust is built. And it's from that place that she's able to move into her feminine and submit to you. I want to be clear. Dominance is not the goal. Being grounded and clear in your direction is the goal. You invite her into the reality that you want to live, into the vision that you're creating together. This is important, so I will say it again. Masculine leadership is not about being dominating or inconsiderate. It's about living in a way that is so clear and kind, directed and honest that you become an invitation. Your leadership becomes an attractive pull, not something that's forced. She will want to submit to you if she trusts and respects you. When I started working with one of my clients, he and his wife hadn't had sex in over a year. He said that they were basically roommates, not intimate partners at this point. And despite his profound business success, he felt like a complete failure at home. And this impacted his confidence in every area of his life. He told me he thought he was doing everything right. He was being agreeable, not rocking the boat, walking on eggshells at home, putting her needs above his own. But their sex life was in a coma. It was dead and in desperate need of CPR. Within a week of us working together, he immediately saw the pattern that was killing his polarity. She didn't trust or respect him to lead. She didn't believe he'd be honest about what he actually wanted. She felt like she had to make all the decisions in the relationship because he deferred to her. She could never surrender in that kind of situation. She could never soften into that sexy part that wants to be taken. So I had him practice being honest about his needs, expressing what he actually wanted. And we started small. We practiced putting himself out there in being okay with possible rejection in small things, like asking for a massage or a snack. And to his surprise, she loved hearing what he wanted. He didn't always get his needs met exactly as he had wished, but he got a lot more. And she started respecting him. We also practiced boundaries, having him say no when he meant no, calmly, without anger, staying calm under pressure during conflict, and not being so bent out of shape by her emotions and not taking her things personally. Within weeks, they started having sex again. She could already start to trust him more, and she voiced it to him. She had been longing to feel him as a man with needs and desires. She wanted to hear him voice them and direct the relationship while considering her needs at the same time. That client I just mentioned, he was stuck. He'd tried everything: therapy, books, new communication hacks. Nothing broke the pattern. What shifted everything was having someone who could see what he couldn't see. Someone who could help him build the capacity to stay grounded when his nervous system went into overdrive. If your sex life feels dead, if you feel her starting to pull away, or if you're doing all the right things and still losing traction, that's exactly what I help men transform in my Trusted Man Intensive. It's one-on-one coaching designed to rebuild your capacity to lead with steady presence when it counts. The link's in the description if you want to explore working together. Here's the thing. Your partner might not tell you exactly what she wants. She might not even know it consciously. But her lack of passion, interest, intimacy, and trust is a huge indicator that she wants you to step into your masculine and take the lead. Here's a golden nugget. A woman is the oracle in the relationship. Her emotional state will show you where you are and where you are not leading. And let me tell you this, you may or may not be the problem, but you are the solution. If she's nagging, if your sex life is dead, if she doesn't trust, respect, or desire you like she did before, use that as a mirror. Stop pointing fingers at her and take radical responsibility for where things are. The man willing to lead takes this as an invitation to step deeper into leadership. Being a victim in your relationship won't increase your sex life or increase respect. It will just perpetuate disconnection. She's waiting for you to lead because she wants to soften and open. She doesn't want to be your mother or your therapist. Here's what she actually wants: a man who doesn't always need her approval. That's how a little boy acts with his mother. She wants a man who will be honest and tell the truth without getting defensive. She wants a man who puts up boundaries where they're needed. A man who can stay calm under pressure and who can stay connected to her emotions without being overrun by them. Here's what most men don't understand. Your pattern of collapsing under emotional pressure often goes back all the way to childhood. If you grew up with a mother who was emotionally unpredictable or a father who was absent, physically and or emotionally, your nervous system learned to track other people's emotions for survival. You became an expert at reading rooms and keeping everyone happy because that's what kept you safe as a kid. And that strategy worked really well then. But in your adult relationship, it's killing attraction. The good news is it can be retrained. So here are 4 practical steps you can take today to implement this. The first is stop blaming her and start taking radical responsibility. Use her as a reflection of where you are and are not leading in the relationship. If she's closed, not desiring you, being nagging, that's a mirror showing you where you are not leading. The second is stop trying to be more emotionally expressive. She doesn't need you to emotionally vomit everything on her. Here's what I wish I knew earlier. She wants to know where you're at emotionally and trust that you can deal with it. She does not want to be your therapist or your mother. She needs to know what's going on within you and that you have the capacity to deal with it. The biggest game changer for me was working with a coach and joining a men's group. This is where I brought my struggles. It's where I processed so much of my stuff so that I could actually get clarity on how to communicate it and take aligned action. It was at that stage that I could bring my awareness of the issue to my partner, not while I was drowning in the deep end. The third thing you can do is to train your emotional containment. This is critical for masculine leadership, and it's so often overlooked. So many guys focus on communication tactics and intellectual hacks, but you want to build the capacity in your nervous system to stay connected to her emotions without losing your center. You don't want to get defensive when she's angry or upset. And instead, you want to stay open and curious about what's underneath, to be able to listen to her, to hear her. Women operate differently than men. Most women don't need logical solutions. They just need to be heard. And often, within minutes of being heard, that emotional intensity will start to dissipate. And what could have sent the relationship sideways for days becomes an opportunity for deeper intimacy, trust, and connection. The fourth thing you can do is stay grounded when the feminine storm comes. She'll be able to trust you more. Sometimes she might even create tension just to test to see if she can trust you, whether that's conscious or unconscious on her part. So the more that you can stay present with what's inside of you and with her, without blowing everything up or shutting down, the more she'll trust you. Essentially, this is about prioritizing connection over being right. And it's fucking hard. I still struggle with this. There are times when I want to defend or rationalize or intellectualize, but I have enough experience now to know where that gets me. When I can put my ego in check and orient myself toward connection instead of being right, everything in my relationship improves. So, to sum it up, this work is not about becoming softer or harder. Your emotional availability is a gift. But to really earn her deepest trust and respect, you need to become steady in the storm, to become that place where she can land when everything else in her life feels chaotic. This will open her heart and allow her to trust you. Most men don't need to feel more. They need to stop abandoning themselves every time things get intense. This is the mark of a trustworthy man, a man worth following, and the man your partner is craving. Now that you understand the difference between emotional availability and emotional leadership, you might be wondering, how do I actually practice this emotional containment when she's upset? What does staying grounded actually look like in the moment? And that's exactly what I break down in my next video. I'll show you the specific techniques I use to stay anchored when conflict arises and how to turn moments of tension into deeper intimacy. I'll see you there.